Hello, good to see you all. Yep, as I probably told you, in St. Petersburg, we would normally refer to Sheremetev Palace as the Fountain House, Fontanny Dome. Why? Because it's just standing on the Fountain River, Fontanka River, and it's basically one of the oldest buildings from the times of let's say, the beginning of St. Petersburg, let's say the formative years of St. Petersburg, because we're talking here 1710, 1720s when this house was built. And as you probably remember, it's basically the Fountain River up until the 19th century. Well, up until the beginning of the 19th century, end of the 18th century was the city limits. So we're looking at the 18th century suburban residents St. Petersburg, and now it just happens to be in the very heart of the city. That's the Fountain River. And it's called Fountain River because actually this river didn't have a name, but it was just referred to as Yerik, nameless body of water. It doesn't really even look like, a big river. It's just a small, it looks more like a small canal other than the river, but that's what it is. And it just was called so because these waters of this nameless river were just, well, fed the fountains in Peter's garden, in one of the Peter's gardens. That's how everything came about. Just in case, that's Peter the Great, in case you forgot what he looked like. And nowadays, Sheremetev Palace has had many functions over the course of the 20th century, of course. And it after the revolution, it was a museum of aristocratic life, and also it was the museum of science in the 30s and 40s, and then after the siege of Leningrad, it reopened as the Museum of Arctic and Antarctic, which was also a research facility. And well, later, after a long restoration, it eventually became the Museum of Musical Instruments, and it underwent really long restoration. It was originally built by Boris Sheremetev, who was one of the closest friends and associates of Peter the Great. Misha, could you please save the lighthouse? I just asked Misha to fetch the lighthouse so I could show you, and then we just need to put it away. I mean, it's already dried, but I still want to keep it, in a safe place for a while. Yeah, so Boris Sheremetev got this plot of land for free, but the idea of Peter the Great giving the land for free was such that these people, well, they had to build something, an estate, or a manor or something, and that's what Boris Sheremetev did. However, well, by the way, in this painting, this is Peter the Great, and you see next to him a man in the red. That's Boris Sheremetev. Was just really next to him. He was several times. He really had to. He almost sacrificed his own life for Peter the Great. That's how loyal he was to Peter, and probably that's why Peter gave him such a good plot of land for his estate. However, Boris Sheremetev didn't really live in St. Petersburg. He preferred to live in the suburbs of Moscow. I mean, he did leave, of course, but whenever it was possible, he would escape to Moscow. And well, you probably know that I used to live in Moscow for about 5 years. Grisha was born in Moscow. And this is actually where my guiding started, in Moscow. And as I lived in Moscow, I visited, I think, nearly every museum in the city and also a lot of estates around Moscow. And there are some really amazing places that I really wish, our Moscow guides could take you to, but I don't see it possible. So I think that this fall, Oleg, in September, he should be in Moscow, and I think he would be having some side hustle with me. So I just wanted to kind of tease you a little bit of the places I could show you. There are at least four estates that belong to Sheremetev family that we can visit. Kuskova, for example, beautiful Baroque residence, and oh my goodness, this even reminds me of Peterhof. This reminds me of of the Hermitage. Actually, this building is called the Hermitage. This is me probably at the age of 24, 25. Really happy. And in the photo, you can see in the mirror, Misha taking a picture of me. So uh, I just made it to Moscow, moved and would escape to another beautiful aristocratic villa or a museum, just for fun, just for kicks. But when it gets to St. Petersburg residence, it's mainly his son, Nikolai Sheremetev, that uh, spent, well, not most of his time, but let's say the end of his life, the later years of his life in St. Petersburg. And last time I started telling you the story of Nikolai Sheremetev and his wife, who originally was his servant, his serf, well, slave, basically, right? So Praskovia Kovaleva was actually her last name. She was a daughter of another serf of Sheremetev. Sheremetevs were one of the richest families in the country. So just imagine how many serfs they had. And Sheremetevs had so much money and they were so educated that they had their own theater that, well, was just as good as the state theater. Just imagine that. And they in every residence that the Sheremetevs had, they would have their own theater with a stage, with proper specs and everything. So, for example, Arhangelsk. So that's one, and just another estate I could easily take you to. And so in every estate, that's also us. I don't even remember when it was, probably 2000, 2014, 2012. I'm not sure. And so they even built a separate building, a pavilion for a theater, and they hired an Italian artist that was specialized in designing of specs, backdrops, and other things for theater. So they took it really seriously, their theater thing. And because, well, the relationships of an aristocrat with a serf was really frowned on, they decided to move from Moscow to move to St. Petersburg. And eventually, after many years, we will talk some more about it when the time comes, but eventually they got married and their marriage was recognized. And so Dmitry Nikolaevich was their son. Nikolaevich means son of Nikolai. That's a patronymic name. And but the thing is that still, the nobility, the aristocrats, well, they kind of had to officially acknowledge, recognize their marriage, but they didn't have to welcome Praskovia Zemchugova in their house, or she wasn't even invited to most of the events. So she kind of had a very secluded life. And in the palace, when they moved in, so they came to St. Petersburg, right? And they moved in this palace. There was even built a chain of rooms next to the church where, well, were the rooms of Praskovia Zemchugova. And these chain of rooms are called rooms before the church. They actually were three rooms. And obviously what we're seeing now is different from what it was back at at the turn of the 19th century, of course. But we're still going to be seeing things related to that moment, to that period of life, a very important part of life of the Sheremetev dynasty. So Nikolai Sheremetev, after Praskovia Zemchugova passed away, last time I told you that she passed away several weeks after giving birth to their son Dmitry. And Nikolai Sheremetev was inconsolable. He never really got over the death of his wife, and he continued his activities, all his charity projects, because it was just thanks to her. She kind of opened his heart to even more charity projects. And in this painting, for example, we're also going to see a copy of this painting on the wall in this room, which is called Room Before the Church. And we're going to see Nikolai Sheremetev, so the husband, and he's pointing at a building, right? So if you take a closer look, I'm zooming it in for you, you will actually see a building. So he's pointing at a building. And this is the building that he constructed, which was his last project. It's a big hospital for anyone built in Moscow. And it's still around. This is the photo. It's a photo from Wikipedia, but I've seen this house so many times. It's just right in the center, and it now belongs to a hospital. It's a part of the Sklifosovsky Hospital, one of the most famous, respected medical facilities in Moscow. Well, or maybe I should say used to be. I don't know, but anyway, and this hospital admitted anyone, and everyone used to be treated there free of charge. If a woman gave birth and she didn't want anyone to see it and she didn't want to keep a baby, she could also do that, and she knew that the baby would be taken care of. Any woman, regardless of her position in the society, her reputation, could be given a medical examination and could undergo different procedures. No one would ever ask her anything. So anyone, everyone was given their medical attention, support, and provided medical services, all covered by just solely Sheremetev family. Huge house. Nikolai Sheremetev passed away before the construction finished, but it's a museum now, and I was there in 2013, and I took these pictures. And when we see the church, and this is the church in this medical facility, but when we see a church in this palace, we will clearly see the resemblance, basically a copy paste of the church. Well, because it's just one of the same architect that designed the project. And we are back to the fountain house, Sheremetev Palace. This is a clock and an organ. Believe it or not, 19th century Italy. Let me just get rid of the bot. Get lost, you both. Bot. Done. There you go. It's not going to be distracting us anymore. Yeah. So, and we have what we have just seen. Well, the Italian 19th century clock and an organ. Many of the exhibits in the palace where musical instruments are actually in good condition, and many of them can be played. I have never heard the organ, the one that I have just shown you, but I have seen some musical instruments made by this man. This is a portrait of a person, right? So in this room, we're going to see portraits of Nikolai Sheremetev, his wife, the former servant. We're going to see portraits of some nobility members, but this portrait here stands out because it's a portrait of the musical instrument maker, Ivan Batov. That was, well, originally he was a serf of the Sheremetevs. He was a serf. He was a slave of the Sheremetev family. Sheremetevs, yes, they invested a lot in their serfs. They took care of them and they nourished their talents. So musicians, actors in the theater, singers, artists, or musical instrument maker, right? They indeed foster creativity and the talents of the serfs that served them. Well, but they were not that willing to let them go. I mean, to set them free, and that was a thing. But Ivan Batov was an exception. His musical instruments were of such a good quality that they started to be purchased. So the people started purchasing them, and eventually Sheremetevs had to set him free because also these musical instruments used to be even bought by Europeans, and it didn't sound too well saying that a certain Ivan Bartov that created those musical instruments, they were actually made by a Serb. So it wasn't really a comme il faut thing. So Sheremetevs had to let them go. And several years ago, there was an exhibition of violins and cellos that were made by Ivan Batov. He created many of them. And you can find them in Russia, you can find them in Europe. So Europeans also purchased those musical instruments. And these are the instruments made by Batov. I'm not sure about the guitar. These are the photographs taken from the website of the Sheremetev Palace. I don't have any photographs of mine, but I just really wanted to share them with you. So this is the cello that belonged to that was made by Ivan Bartov. I don't know who it belonged to. Also violins that he made, and some of them are now part of the permanent exhibition in the room before church, or anti-church room. So this is Ivan Bartov, and his portrait is really just next to the portrait of his master. I don't think Sheremetev himself would have approved that, but we don't care, right? But it's just interesting. But yes, probably Sheremetev family were one of the best when it got down to taking care of the serfs. I think they did a really good job, and I also understand why they didn't want to let them go, of course. So imagine Sheremetev family at one point had about 50 actors and actresses who could play well, who could sing well, extremely talented. And the performances at the theater that were arranged by Sheremetevs absolutely couldn't be missed. Absolutely. And this portrait is of Praskovya Zhemchugova. Well, his wife. Actually, her name was Kovaleva. It's a very common last name in Russia. Definitely coming from Maria, behave. Praskovya Kovaleva. Kovaleva is a very simple last name. It's definitely telling you of a very, I would say, common person. But Zhemchugova, that's actually coming from the last name that was invented by Sheremetevs in order to get a permission from the Tsar. No, this is going to be very distracting. No, I'm going to do it again. I haven't figured out how to not allow Maria doing that, but I haven't figured out yet how to do it. I'm really sorry. No, just give me a second. So in order for the Tsar to give a permission to Sheremetevs to marry his former serf, he first has to set her free, of course. So she was given freedom. She was granted freedom, and then he needed a permission from the Tsar. And for that, let's say to add some gravitas to the application, he invented, he hired people to make up a legend as if, she actually originally came from an old Italian or Polish, not Italian, but Polish dynasty. Well, that didn't work. Well, I mean, he hired people, he bribed people, but it didn't help. It would only take another 10 years eventually for another emperor, who was Alexander I, grandson of Catherine the Great, to actually grant permission and recognize the wedding. Well, anyway, that's also Boris Sheremetev, the so-called, not the founder of the dynasty, but the founder of the Fountain House in the portrait. And also here we have, which is really important, the collection of family porcelain, such as these plates, for example. By the way, these plates, they have coat of arms of the Sheremetevs, but they were sold in the Soviet period. They were sold probably in one of the auctions, or maybe someone also smuggled them out of the country. Who knows? Also, different figurines, porcelain. If they had it in abundance, of course. It was a really big part of the collection that the Sheremetevs had amassed by then. And the museum and people still keep finding them on auctions, on the flea markets, vintage stores across Europe, and I mean antique stores. And museum just buys it whenever it can. And we have it here in the museum as well. Just something from the personal collection, private collection of the Sheremetevs. And speaking of Praskovia Zhemchugova, so she suffered from this, all people always, treating her with not disrespect, but clearly something was off, and she couldn't bear it, and eventually she developed tuberculosis. Unfortunately. Also in this room, one could see this interesting thing. This is not a musical instrument, but it's something that used to be in one of the residences that belonged to Sheremetevs. This is a thunder machine that was invented by one of the serfs for the theater to imitate the sound of thunder. And this instrument actually came from another residence that we can visit. Let me know if you're interested, and I can easily send a leg there in September, called Ostankino. In Ostankino, they also had a theater. In every estate, they had a theater. And so this thunder machine comes from Ostankino. This is the theater that it was restored. But this is the theater. So there was built a pavilion for the theater, and it would house hundreds of people, 100 something. And some photos from my camera roll, because I have a lot of them. I think this 2015, I think it's, 2015. And and also exactly in this 3 rooms before the church, there was the bedroom of Praskovia Zhemchugova, or Kovaleva Zhemchugova. The bed hasn't survived, and it was decided. Sorry, and it was decided to, as you probably know, their son was in charge of the collection, and he asked to appoint him the curator of the museum of aristocratic lifestyle, in order to upkeep and keep an eye on the collection, of course. So it was decided just to turn this room into the collection of icons that the family had amassed, because Praskovia Zhemchugova had a lot of icons by her bed, in her bedroom, and these are all the icons from the family collection. A lot of them were gifts, of course. We have some photographs from that was still, by the way, the collection of icons. These photographs were taken before the revolution, so it was the sort of a small exhibition. But obviously, after the revolution, the museum had to be very careful with exhibits like this, and then were eventually taken to a storage. But the photographs we have, and this icon of Nicholas the Wonder Worker is dated back to around 15th century. Big time from the family collection. A lot of them, they were just gifted to the family. The church. So this church, as I said, it looks very similar to the church in the house in the hospital that was built in Moscow, which is not part of the big hospital complex in the heart of Moscow. And the church, the photographs that we saw, the church in Moscow was inspired by this church that was built in the palace, um, thanks to Nikolai Sheremetev. The thing is that he wanted to get married in Petersburg. That's why they moved to St. Petersburg from very conservative Moscow. And he commissioned to an architect to uh, redesign the old church building and to rebuild the church. And it had to be even more glamorous, even more ornate, because it was meant to be the wedding venue. So this is where he wanted this wedding ceremony to be carried out. He was madly in love, like madly in love. This is the illustration of an iconostasis, or the icon stand that once used to be here. This church underwent a massive restoration several years ago, and when it reopened, well, people actually love the work. It has beautiful acoustics. It has also connection to there is one of the door that takes you to the garden. And in one of the final episodes, we're definitely going to walk in the garden, because the territory that the estate takes is way bigger than it seems. In the photographs, it seems a very small building, but it's actually not. Actually not. And there was also another big change that took place also in the 19th century, since it became the permanent residence for Nikolai Sheremetevs and Praskovia Shevchukova-Kovalova. They needed a theater here as well. So they asked to build a building, a pavilion for theater. And this became the concert hall / theater. And last time, when we watched the first episode, I shared with you some videos of concerts, concerts with musical instruments, which are part of the collection. Because as I started saying, and then I just got distracted again, carried away with something else. I was going to say that many exhibits in the museum collection can be played, and they regularly take part in different concerts and events in the house. These musical instruments do not leave the premises of the museum, but they still live a very active life. And also, this theater, this concert hall right now, is still a very popular venue for music events, because it has really good acoustics. It's been recently restored, and it's cozy, beautiful, and conveniently located. So I wanted to share with you a short video that I found on YouTube. I just screen recorded it from YouTube, a concert from this exactly concert hall, performed by a small orchestra, only made up of women, young ladies in classical music industry. I know this band or orchestra from, I've known it for, I think, forever. I admire these girls. I think they're doing a great job. For some reason, they only have 864 followers. Please follow them if it, I don't know, if it just resonates, because, they're doing a very good job. And I just wanted to share with you a little episode of a music piece that they're playing for the museum night. So it's evening with beautiful ladies playing violins. It's just gorgeous. It might be a little bit too loud on your end. You might want to turn down the volume a little bit. I just don't want you to get scared. And you have to don't have a conductor. Yes, so these ladies know how to So thank you, Ashraf. I think it was beautiful, and it was just recorded with somebody's phone, but the sound was so good. So the acoustics here is absolutely impeccable. So it's not always there is a chance to actually visit the room. In most cases, it's not really available. You can't really walk in, but you could just see it when there is a kind of a a restriction or a rope or something. But so Oleg was able to film just a little bit, and and this became a very popular concert hall. However, because Praskovia Shevchukova could not, well, because she was not really welcomed by the society, she didn't perform in this palace. It remained a concert hall, and after her death, it and under any Sheremetev, it remained a popular concert hall and a popular venue. But unfortunately, Praskovia Shevchukova, for whom it was designed, never really performed there. Well, maybe for the family members, could be, but also because shortly after moving to St. Petersburg, she developed tuberculosis. Probably she didn't really. I'm not sure, but definitely not for public. We have been to this golden room before, but there is something, just one more exhibit that I really want to share the story of. It's golden, just in case you forgot. That's because the ceiling is completely covered. Everything you see that seems golden is actually golden, and on the gold, those the paintings of the ceiling were made. All these leafy decorations. Yeah, so that's why it's called a golden room. One of the names is the golden room. But um, we did talk about the interiors and some beautiful violins in the collection that were made by the son of Stradivari, by the Stradivari. But there is one violin, actually a cello, that I failed to tell you about. Well, I didn't have enough time, so I need to fix this. I really, 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 really need to address this. There is a cello that belonged to Nicholas II. Nicholas II didn't play the cello, but he had it in his collection. Oh, and by the way, next time on 1st of August, I'm gonna be showing you the collection of musical instruments that belonged to the Romanov family. Because so far, we've only seen the gala rooms with very few exhibits. But next time, I'm actually finally taking you to the big museum room with gazillions of exhibits there. So it's going to be really, really musical. But now we are enjoying the palace interiors, some musical instruments, and the family history as well. So next time, Romanov musical instrument collection. So, well, what on earth is this cello doing here, and how on earth did Nicholas II have the cello? It was given to him. It was created specially for him, and then Natalie may say, "Wowza, that's Hague. That's the Hague. Yes, this is the Peace Palace in the Hague." Okay, and how is it connected to Nicholas II? How is it related? Well, some of you may remember, and it's a it's the public knowledge that the Peace Palace was inaugurated, and the famous Hague Peace Conference happened thanks to Nicholas II, who at the very end of 1890s put forward an idea of the peace conference because he wanted to call for the actually disarmament, and he wanted to put to an end the arms race in Europe because everyone felt uh, what was going to happen, and we know what happened. The First World War happened. But actually, before that, the revolution in Russia and then the Russia-Japanese War, we're talking 1905, 1906. But Nicholas II was referring to a big world-scale conflict that would affect every European country, which happened in the First World War. And for this peace conference, that was well, that happened thanks to Nicholas II. There is still portrait of Nicholas II in one of the rooms of the Peace Palace. I haven't been inside. I have some selfies next to the Peace Palace, of course, but this is the postcard that I've been able to find online. The big portrait of Nicholas II, thanks to whom that peace conference actually started and well happened, and the Peace Palace was built. So that was it. So that's the portrait. And for that conference, for that visit, to thank Nicholas II for his initiative, um, one of the mm, one of the musical instruments maker, well, actually violin and cello maker, gave it to Nicholas II. It was a present, and Nicholas just loved it. Now we have it in the museum. Let's move on. So we are in the Etruscan room. I think the design probably speaks for itself, of course. The Etruscan drawing room. This is the original design, by the way, of the room as it was in Sheremetev's times. And it was just inspired by the numerous archaeological discoveries in Italy, in various places. Obviously, uh, every European country, every aristocratic dynasty immediately went nuts about it. It went viral, and everyone wanted to have an attraction room. So just as simple as that. And for this particular room, there was even created the set of furniture. So normally you just create a room and then you commission a furniture set. By the way, actually up until mid 19th century, there wasn't really such a thing as the furniture set. But things changed very quickly, and well, eventually it had to be a concept. Here, even the doors have the original, restored, but the original design. So we have some photographs from the early 1900s. We can still see the Etruscan design, and we see also a lot of showcases because, as I said, under the last Sheremetev, there were, well, several rooms were basically redesigned into a museum space. And here the museum has a collection of harps, well, because it's the Etruscan room, so it kind of really makes sense to have some old instruments or something that we know that used to be played in ancient Greece. And so we have these instruments. These are mainly the instruments of the 19th century. I haven't seen them in action. I don't know if they take part in concerts. That I don't know. As you probably remember, the massive art collection that the Sheremetevs had is was scattered during the Soviet times, was scattered around the country and also was sold abroad. So we don't really have a lot from the art collection that used to be part of the Sheremetev's collection, but we have some furniture, and we have the palace, and we have this amazing room. And however, as I said, it was really a big fad back in the 19th century to have an Etruscan room, or at least, a grotesque room, or at least something that was inspired by the designs of the fresco that were discovered in Pompeii or several other excavations in Italy in 1830s. But we don't really have Etruscan rooms in any other palaces in St. Petersburg. We have grotesque rooms, we have antique rooms, but we don't have these type of designs. We don't have them. And it's good that we have in the collection a lot of furniture in Chippendale style that we have. I told you last time about it. We don't really have this much Chippendale in St. Petersburg, but thanks to Sheremetevs, we have some. In this room, there also, as I remember, because I'm a licensed tour guide to the Sheremetev Palace and the museums of theater, art, and ballet in St. Petersburg. And there used to be a piano that belonged to Alexander Dragomishsky, who was the member of this mighty five, the so-called Magucha Kuchka. Is just the five composers that, were the most popular, that were the founding fathers, let's say, of the classical music industry in the country. And they created some of the most fundamental operas. So Alexander Gamishsky was one of them. And this was his piano from the 19th century, of course. And I wanted, as I promised, I wanted to share with you a bit of a video, part of the video of the opera that was composed by Dragomishsky. It's called The Stone Guests. It was, I'm providing here a very short description. So it was inspired by the short poem by Alexander Pushkin, who was Russian Byron, poet of early 19th century. So it's about the womanizer, Don Juan, who returns secretly to Madrid and becomes obsessed with Donna Anna, a widow of a man he has killed. Their love affair takes a supernatural turn when Don Juan mockingly invites the dead man's stone statue to join them, with fatal consequences. What an idiot. How did it even cross his mind? Right? Anyway, so let's just watch this opera. This opera is considered, some of the best works by Dragomishsky. Again, you might want to just readjust the volume a little bit on your end.
Уж не сердито, Лаура, спой еще. На прощание. Уж ночь. Ну что же я спою?
Well, it's giving, some Spanish guitar vibes a little bit. So, yeah. Anyway, we have time just for one more room, I think. Yeah, we do. Green drawing room. I love this room because here we not only do we see some more exhibits and also just lovely interiors, but also we have the story of another interesting personality. We have the photograph of what this room looked like, how even more gorgeous it used to be. Look at the dessous boards, the above the door decorations. Look at the chandelier. Look at these embossed leather upholstery. I was just about to say wallpaper, but it's better to say upholstery. You don't really see it, but this room has always been green. And just look at the furniture. Gorgeous, right? Yeah, well, it's not as gorgeous anymore, but it's not that bad. It could have been way worse. Obviously, the now upholstery is new, but it kind of resembles the original colors, well, more or less. We have the artworks in the collection mainly belong to the collection that once belonged to a Bolensky family. And also, we have a lot of exhibits that were not coming, they actually did not come from the Sheremetev collection. The museum also has collections that belong to other, families or donors. By the way, this is the portrait of a woman. Well, this portrait absolutely has to be in this museum because this is the portrait of the Grand Duchess Ekaterina Pavlovna Romanova, uh, thanks to whom actually the musical education system was established. It was her idea that she kind of put forward to Rubinstein brothers to establish the higher educational facility for musicians, that is conservatory. The one in Moscow and in St. Petersburg were established by the Rubinstein brothers, originally Jewish, but obviously converts. Well, their parents converted, not the boys. The parents had converted before the children were born, even. So it was all thanks to Elena Pavlovna. So having the museum, actually the complex of museums of music, theater, and ballet, well, it wouldn't have been here without Elena Pavlovna. I am pretty sure. So that's why we have the portrait of Elena Pavlovna in the original frame, of course. And as I was saying, the exhibits in this room are actually part of the private collection of Valentina Golod. Valentina Golod came, but look at this woman. Look at how elegantly she was dressed in the Soviet period. She came from an aristocratic family, and for some reason, she wasn't touched by the Soviets. Well, her family, well, she didn't really speak much, during the Lenin and Stalin period. Her family had to keep it quiet, but they eventually were the family of the so-called intelligentsia, Saint Petersburg, Leningrad intelligentsia. But they lived in the historic apartment. This is her apartment, and she basically lived in the museum. She inherited a big art collection from her family, from her father, who was an interpreter and also a written translator of from several languages. She herself translated from French. She also spoke several languages fluently. And this is her portrait also in her room, in her apartment. I think it's 1960s, 1970s. And this is the photograph I found online of actually her apartment. And what we see some artworks, well, this vase, this portrait, the um, the bronze clock. We're actually going to see now in Sheremetev's museum because after her death, well, Valentina Golod um, just gave her it was given to the museum after her death. So she wanted to donate everything to the Museum of Music because she was a frequent guest there. Uh, she was connected to the museum. And also in this room, you have the collection of the perfume bottles or actually the figure, which I totally neglected, the small objet de fantaisie that were made by Fabergé. So today we even get to see some Fabergé, not the eggs, but these little pigs. Well, that pig is definitely from the Fabergé collection. Well, Fabergé didn't only make eggs and many other things. So all these beautiful vases, perfume bottles, and all these small sniff boxes. And well, this was just her private collection. And this is a small showcase that's called Mother of Pearl, because here we have the collection of necessaires and, jewelry boxes and different items made with mother of pearl. Also from the collection of Valentina Golod. Amazing, incredible. This crazy. Yeah. And also the amazing thing is even in this palace, which again, as I said, underwent really long restoration and it lasted it's still going. Now, some of the rooms are still being restored, but it's amazing that The fireplaces have survived. A lot of some, let's say, some of the decorations have survived. And next time we're going to see the rest of the rooms. Of that, well, that belong so-called to so-called gala rooms of the palace, and we're going to dive more into actually the music collection, the musical instruments collection. Okay, so let me open the chat for your questions. If you have them, I'll be happy to address them, of course. And hi to all those who joined us already as we started. I'm going to share with you the links. So I'm going to share the link for the YouTube live stream that we had a few hours ago when I painted myself a beautiful lighthouse. We had fun. So I enjoyed it, and I hope you'll enjoy it too. I also, asked questions to Zhenya. We spoke a little bit about her art, and I do like what she's been making. And she now, her works are now taking part in several exhibitions in Europe. And also, in 1 hour from now, I'm taking you to the house of Bach, a Jewish merchant. It's one of those famous tenant houses in Saint Petersburg, end of the 19th century, and we're going to see both. Well, actually, we're going to see the lobby. We're going to see the 19th century, expensive apartment, and also we're going to see the communal apartment. We're going to see everything. That's the tour I'll be doing for all virtual tours in 1 hour from now. So you have the link there. And for tomorrow, well, you can hear it now, but I can hear it. So Emma and Misha are now rehearsing. We're going to have a concert at home, but not our home, which you already know very well. All of you have been invited to our place so many times, but we're going to be doing it in a different location. We're going to have a terrace, rooftop, overlooking the downtown of Tbilisi, and it's a beautiful location. So we're going to be having a concert, singing in different languages, including Yiddish, Russian, of course. We're going to be singing about Georgia, and Emma's going to be sharing stories, from her career because she used to sing at a band, and she runs her school theater as well, alongside being a teacher and many other things. So that. And also tomorrow, I'm taking you for a final episode of the apartment and museum of Ilya Chavchavadze, a very important figure in Georgian history. And I'm taking you to Jerusalem, of course, for some insane archaeology that spans over 2,500 years. So yeah, that's the plan. I don't see anything on the chat, but I do hope everything is working and you have been able to see everything. Good to see you all. So I wasn't able to say hi to everyone, but I'm really grateful to each and every one of you for joining my tours. Cindy, Deborah, Dolly, Karen, Catherine, Marilyn, Marty, Natalie, Ronnie, Satyam, Sharon. Thank you so much for finding time and join my tours. Next weekend, we're going to be doing it in Batumi by the Black Sea. And I'm going to be running tours every day next week. It's going to be a lot of, starting from next weekend and then the entire week as we're going to be in Batumi with Emma. We might even, arrange something with her, but we'll see how it goes. But there's going to be a lot of, tours for different companies that I work for, but a couple of my own live streams, and I'm going to be taking you to some lobbies as well. We'll see how it works out. So that's the plan. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. As you know, I would appreciate your support. You could send me a PayPal donation. You could buy me a coffee. Everything, every support matters. Every $5 also matters to me, as you know. And I really appreciate your time and your interest in what I show you. I try to keep it diverse. I try to keep it entertaining and a little bit personal, and always, loaded with history and facts that, might really appeal to various audiences. Thank you so much for joining me. And I have not opened. Have I not opened the chat for questions? This is really weird. Let me just double check. Oh yeah, I have not opened the chat. That's why you're not. Yeah, that's why the chat is dead. I was wondering what's going on here. Thank you so much, Dolly, for flagging this. So I'm not leaving now. Because if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to address them. So as I said, the museum is massive. Just we've only seen a fraction of the rooms. So next time we're gonna see some of the gala halls as well, some gala rooms, and then well, really the halls, still the interiors loaded with showcases with different musical instruments. It's it's crazy. Well, I won't be able to speak about every instrument, and don't expect me to tell you the stories of how musical instruments are made and what they're made of. I don't even know the vocabulary, but well, we know some really amazing stories of these instruments, and they might be. Well, there's one room that has about 50, no, not 50, no, that's in Moscow. Yeah, but the Moscow also has their own musical instruments collection and the museum, and I have been there many times. So there's like a room with 20 something violins, and they all look the same, but the stories behind them. And also, I will try to find at least some videos of some concerts just on YouTube. I'll just simply screen record it, but I really wanted to hear how a 19th century and 18th century violin sounds now. Yeah. So that's that. Thank you so much, Dolly. Thank you. That's really lovely of you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for me. Thank you for your support. And I will see you shortly in the back house in St. Petersburg. Bye bye. And I'm so excited about, oh, lovely piano tuner in the Netherlands. Amazing. Wow. Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Karen, for your support as well. You've always been so supportive. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone. He gets to meet interesting people. Oh, yeah, for sure, Dolly. Well, now you need to tell me the stories. So whenever you have time, whenever you feel like, please do share something with me. It's gonna be fun to listen to. Thank you so much. I will see you shortly. Bye bye.